Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Robertson, for recording the meeting. As I said, this is the Strategic Development Planning Authority meeting on Monday, the 17th of May 2021 at 2 p.m. Do we have any apologies for today?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Cox, Councillor Bell and Councillor Latham, who is substituted by Councillor Mollison.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, the meeting will be recorded and later published online. If we could keep our cameras and mics off unless you're asked to speak. If we can just move swiftly on to the agenda. Item 1 is declarations of members' interest. Has anyone got any declarations to make? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicating. No. Okay, moving swiftly on to item 2, which is the minute of the previous meeting of the 11th of December, which is on pages 3 to 6. Can I accept that we approve those? Again, if you could indicate otherwise. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicating. Okay, on to the main item of today's business, which is Aberdeen City and Shire's response to the National Planning Framework minimum all tenure housing land requirements, which is items on pages 7 to 28 with an appendix on pages 11 to 28. If I could just hand over to Mr. Walsh.
Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Members have before them, as Councillor Bolton said, a report relating to the National Planning Framework's housing land requirements. I won't go too into detail to the background of that because members have obviously been part of a workshop and they're well up to speed on this. But to give a quick summary, we have received draft figures from the Scottish Government and we've been told that we must respond to these draft figures by the 4th of June. The parameters of the consultation mean that the figures are based around the CHMA's, or the Centre for Housing Market Analysis Housing Need and Demand Assessment tool, which is something that we've used for previous strategic development plans, and officers and members will be familiar with a housing need and demand assessment, which was presented a number of years ago for our adopted strategic development plan. The draft consultation figures, the numbers that they've come out with are lower than what we have in the current strategic development plan, and they have an imbalanced split, which has 60% of development coming forward, or 60%, sorry, should I say, need coming forward in Aberdeenshire and 40% coming forward in Aberdeen City. So on the basis of that, officers, after discussing with elected members of the SDPA and Aberdeen City Council, Aberdeen Shire Council, went out and undertook a process of engagement. So this involved briefing yourselves and having a workshop with SDPA elected members. We also presented to councillors, or sent briefing notes to councillors, and we engaged with community councils and the development industry. So it was quite a lot of engagement in an extremely short period of time. It was almost like undertaking a mini SDP. It's probably the best way to do it. So it's been a challenge to consider everybody's thoughts on this and to consider them in an in-depth manner, given the time that we've been given. But what we found out of that consultation, or that engagement, was similar themes seemed to emerge from all the stakeholders that we engaged with. So from yourselves and other elected members, there was a concern that the numbers we had received didn't really realise the aspirations that we have as a city region going forward. And there was also concern whether these numbers would address our need for affordable housing as a region. So we rely both on what the councils deliver and also what comes from market supply. So that was probably the two paramount concerns that came back from elected members. Engaging with community councils, we heard something quite similar, but maybe more towards the end of concern relating to affordable housing. That was their main concern. We did receive a late submission from a community council in Aberdeenshire, and that echoed those considerations as well. But it also stressed a feeling that there was maybe a loss of control over development planning as a result of the National Planning Framework, and that was also touched on in our meeting with the Strategic Development Planning Authority members. Lastly, we met with the development industry. We engaged with a group that I suppose The essence of it was a group that we would have worked with before when we developed our own housing need and demand assessment, and that brought people from both the market sector and the RSLs and third sectors who are delivering affordable housing. And similar themes emerged again, which was the aspirations side of it, and also would we be able to address the need for affordable housing going forward. And then the split between both the city and the Shire. So there was, I suppose you could say there was alignment on that, the development industry felt it was better to share that aspiration equally between both the city and the Shire. So trying to condense all that together into a response and then work with the parameters that we were given has been a bit of a challenge. We've come up with what we think is a reasonable and evidence-based response to this. Now, we can only use the tools that the Scottish Government have set out, and the reason we can only use those tools is because that's been the evidence base and that's been the structure that we've used to produce our own strategic development plans, so it probably wouldn't be very appropriate to undermine that. But what we've come back with is the use of the high migration scenario. Now, that might sound maybe a little bit of a change from what is in the principle, but this high migration scenario is higher than what the Scottish Government have proposed, but it's lower than what's in the strategic development plan at the moment. So it's a middle ground, which we believe will accommodate all parties. The positive part of that as well is that the use of the high migration scenario splits development roughly 50-50 between the city and the Shire. It actually brings it to 49% in Aberdeen City and 51% in Aberdeenshire. So I don't think we'll quibble too much about that. That's about as good as we could get it. And in terms of the numbers, they're both quite good numbers. It's more than what we would have on the housing lists. So I think that gives us a bit of security and a bit of headroom there. The other point that we've tried to transpose into the submission is that most parties feel that it is better to address matters of housing need through the housing market areas rather than on a local authority basis, because we're quite fluid in terms of how people move in and out of the city and the Shire. People like to live around in the Shire and work in the city and vice versa. And then I think the final main point on this is that there is a view that not all of Aberdeenshire should be considered as a rural authority. While in terms of population density, it may be similar to other parts of the country, that's just due to its sheer size. However, when you actually look at the number of people who live in Aberdeenshire, you can see that this is equal to the city. We've got some quite large settlements in there, and we wouldn't consider that all of Aberdeenshire should be classed as rural. So that's the basis of our submission. If members are comfortable with that, we would like to return it to the heads of planning and heads of housing for our housing market partnership and submit to the Scottish Government before the 4th of June this year.
Okay, thanks very much, Tom. And I'd just like to pass on my thanks, and I'm sure I'm echoing those on the committee, the SDPA. We recognise the amount of work that you've had to do in a very short time, and that would be bad enough under normal circumstances, but with the COVID conditions that exist, I think it's probably made it 10 times harder. So please accept our thanks and pass them on to your colleagues, because as I say, it's not an easy task, and we appreciate the details and the amount of people that you have managed to get in contact with. So thank you on that. Members, is there any questions for Tom? Again, I'm not seeing any hands. I mean, I think we had a good going over of this initially when we had our workshop, so that I think prepared a lot of us and was very helpful. Members, on page 10 we have the recommendations at 6.1. It's recommended that the Strategic Development Planning Authority notes the contents of the submission on the National Planning Framework for minimum all tenure housing land requirement, and B, direct the respective heads of planning to approve the consultation responses to the National Planning Framework for the minimum all tenure housing land requirement. Can we agree that? I'm not seeing anybody dissenting. Thank you, Councillor Loughy. Thank you, folks. So that's fine. Thank you as I said, for that report. It was really helpful, and all the work you did on it. Members, at item 4, we have the date of the next meeting. We've got a housing land audit to be conducted. Mr. Walsh will have his hands full yet again. So we've looked at dates, and for order to meet sort of the timeline that we're looking at, Can I just suggest that the meeting that we'll put in the diary is Friday the 1st of October? Has anybody got anything that they would immediately see as a concern on the 1st of October? I appreciate you may want to check your diaries, but if we could pencil that in for now. Mr. Walsh, what time would you suggest that would be best?
Yeah, I would say at 2 p.m. I mean, if there's any issue with members, Emma is on standby here, and she can let us know. But I believe she's checked calendars with our colleagues in the Shire, and that looks like it's the best one. Is that okay, Emma? You would agree?
Yes, that's correct. We have 2 possible dates, but Friday the 1st of October at 2 p.m. Certainly for Councillor Cox, and I think for yourself, Councillor Bolton, your diaries were free then.
Okay, so if we could pencil that in then, folks, the 1st of October, 2 p.m. Look forward to seeing you all then. I know it's been a short, sweet meeting, but as I say, I think we put the work in with the workshop before, which has allowed us to allow Tom to get on with it. So thank you very much, officers. Thank you, everyone, for attending today.
Thanks, Chair.
I hate to say I'll see you in October. That sounds so far away. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye.
Bye.